Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So this morning we got a brand new exciting commander from one of the precons with this lovely octopus dude. Now the English version actually hasn't been released yet, so I made my own custom card with the current translation that's online, though that is also not the official translation. And actually I guess one thing wasn't translated with the name, so I just made up a name. How about Cthulhu? Regardless, Cthulhu is a 3/5 horror that costs 2 white, blue, black. It has, when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, tap up to 1 untapped creature you control. When you do, choose target creature that player controls with power less than or equal to the power of the tapped creature. You gain control of that creature for as long as you control Cthulhu. And then whenever you attack with a creature an opponent owns, you gain 2 life and the player who owns that creature loses 2 life. So Cthulhu is all about taking your opponent's creatures and swinging with them to punish your opponents. When Cthulhu enters the battlefield, you can steal up to 3 creatures. Again, that's assuming that you've got 3 opponents in play. I guess that's also assuming that each one of your opponents has a creature. Regardless, though there is a restriction, it's an incredibly powerful effect being able to steal 3 creatures on one go. And again, that restriction is that you have to tap an untapped creature that you control, and that creature's power has to be equal to or greater than the power of the creature that you're trying to steal. So obviously, the bigger the creatures that you have out, the more potential value that you have in stealing creatures. Or at the very least, the more potential and the more options that you have. Still, potentially stealing 3 things for just 5 mana is huge. And obviously, since this is an ETB and you're an Esper, you've got access to a lot of ways to use and abuse this effect. Obviously, there are plenty of blank spells in both white and blue that you can utilize, and there are plenty of spells that can get your creature back when it dies in black. Now, keep in mind that when you do have Cthulhu, or whatever its name is going to be, leave the battlefield, you lose control of those creatures that you stole. But again, better creatures might have come into play at that time, so yeah, you can basically trade up. And we'll actually get to some cards here in a bit, but there are some ways that you can actually permanently keep those creatures, even if Cthulhu leaves the battlefield. So keep stealing your opponent's things to your heart's content, and then attack with them, and then you gain some life and your opponents lose some life. Yeah, sounds like a fun plan. Well, at least for you, not really for your opponents, but that's okay. The first thing that you might want to consider for this deck, though, are what kinds of creatures do I actually want in my deck? Again, to get the most out of this commander's ETB, you want to have a couple of creatures in play that have a decent amount of power. So you might want to consider some creatures that don't really cost a lot to get out and play and have a lot of power and might have a small downside, but that's okay. For example, Desecration Demon is a 6/6 flying demon that costs 2 black, and it says at the beginning of each combat, any opponent may sacrifice a creature. If a player does, tap Desecration Demon and put a +1 counter on it. So this is definitely an undercosted flyer as a 6/6 for just 4 mana. Obviously, there is somewhat of a downside, but that downside can kind of also be an upside in this deck. As long as you're getting your commander's ETB before combat, you're going to be able to tap this and steal something that's pretty big. And actually, if later on you're using this to attack or in combat, your opponents have the option to sacrifice a creature to tap it down, but they are making it bigger, which again will help you steal bigger creatures. So yeah, definitely consider some undercosted creatures when it comes to their power that might have a slight downside, but that downside might not really matter all that much for this kind of a commander. Another type of creature that you might want to consider is one like Wall of Blood. It's a 0/2 wall for 2 and a black, and it says pay 1 life, Wall of Blood gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So though this creature has 0 power to start, it does have a variable amount of power. So you can just pick and choose whatever amount of power that you need for whatever creature that you want to steal. Now, of course, yes, that is going to cost you some life, but again, your commander is kind of like a life gain engine for you in a way. In fact, on each of your turns, your commander can essentially gain you up to 6 life if you attack with 3 creatures that one of each opponent owns. So yeah, it can easily mitigate the life loss from this card, and again, this card can essentially just make it so that you can steal whatever creature on the board that you need to. And again, at just 3 mana, this card can provide you a lot of value throughout the game. And then another potential consideration is a card like Phyrexian Processor. It's an artifact for 4, and when it enters the battlefield, you pay any amount of life. Then by paying 4 and tapping it, you put an XX black minion creature token onto the battlefield where X is the life paid as Phyrexian Processor entered the battlefield. So essentially this is a repeatable token generation engine that can give you some giant tokens. Obviously, there is that upfront cost of paying a decent amount of life to make those tokens decently large, but that's going to be okay. Again, our commander is going to more than help us make up for that amount of life, and the amount of value that this can give us is huge. Again, when this comes into play, simply by paying, 8 or 10 life or whatnot is going to be well worth it. That essentially can guarantee that we're going to be able to take pretty much any creature on the board that we want to with our tokens. So yeah, though there's that inherent cost and some risk with playing this card, the potential value that it can generate you throughout the game is huge. And again, that's not even talking about the fact that you're just making some big tokens that you can utilize in combat to, hit your opponents when you're not stealing the things. Now, another type of creature that came to mind is one like Arbiter of the Ideal. It's a 4/5 Sphinx with flying that costs 4 blue, and it has Inspired. So whenever it becomes untapped, reveal the top card of your library. If it's an artifact, creature, or land card, you may put it onto the battlefield with a manifestation counter on it. That permanent is an enchantment district with other types. So creatures like this that have Inspired actually want to be untapped. So that could be another direction that you go with this deck, focusing on creatures that either want to be tapped or untapped, so when your commander comes into play, you're actually getting more value out of that tap. But speaking of generating more value, of course we've got to talk about some blink cards like Ephemerate. Ephemerate is an instant for a white, and it says exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control, and it's got rebound, so basically you get this spell twice. Again, blinking our commander gets us that ETB again. So if there are some new and improved creatures on the board, well, we can just, trade up and steal those. Obviously, we are losing those creatures that we had already stolen because our commander is leaving play, but still that trade up can be well worth it. And also, like I mentioned before, there are actually some ways to permanently steal those creatures. And ironically, our next example is yet another blink spell that works in a slightly different way with Cloud Shift. Cloud Shift is an instant for a white that says exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. The key difference between Ephemerate and this one is Ephemerate says it's owner's control, and this one says under your control. So essentially, if we really want one of our opponent's creatures to permanently stay on our side, we can just Cloud Shift it and, keep it. Even if we blink our commander with something else, it doesn't matter because that creature is just permanently under our control thanks to this. So obviously a repeatable Cloud Shift effect like Conjurer's Closet is fantastic for this commander. It's an artifact for 5 that says at the beginning of your end step you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Again, keep in mind it does say at the very end, like Cloud Shift, under your control. So with this, we can either choose to keep one of our opponent's creatures permanently, or we can choose to blink our commander and steal some other things. So yeah, a repeatable blink effect like this one is going to be fantastic in this kind of a deck. It gives us a lot of versatility and a lot of options, and if we've got other creatures that have ETBs, we can take advantage of those as well. And actually, in this set, there's a brand new Conjurer's Closet type card with Teleportation Circle. It's an enchantment for 3 and a white, and it says at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So with this, we can choose to blink either an artifact or a creature. Unfortunately though, keep in mind that this does say under its owner's control, so again, unlike Cloud Shift and Conjurer's Closet, it's more like Ephemerate where we can't actually just, keep a creature permanently. Now again, that's not saying that this card can provide us a lot of value throughout the game, it's just something to keep in mind. Regardless, another thing that we definitely want to keep in mind is, well, not giving our opponents their creatures back. So even when we do choose to blink our commander to steal other creatures, well, we can just get rid of those previous creatures that we stole with something like Fanatical Devotion. It's an enchantment for 2 and a white that says sacrifice a creature, regenerate target creature. So a free sacrifice outlet like this one can be fantastic in this deck, and there are a lot of fantastic sacrifice options in these colors. We get some value out of sacrificing the creature, and again, more importantly, we don't give that creature back to our opponents. So with just a free sacrifice outlet in play, with our commander, its ETB now becomes basically a removal spell for creatures that we don't need anymore as well. So we just essentially take all of our opponent's toys for ourselves, and then instead of giving them their toys back after we're done with them, we just break them and throw them away. Yeah, that seems like a pretty Esper thing to do. Another fantastic card that you might want to consider is a card like Thieving Amalgam. It's a 6/7 ape snake that costs 5 black, and it says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you manifest the top card of that player's library. So you essentially steal something off the top of their library and it becomes a 2/2 creature on your side. And then whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this is yet another way to kind of steal our opponent's creatures, or at least their things, off the top of their library and make it into our own. And then on top of that, whenever we now attack or lose any of those creatures, our opponents are going to get drained. So yeah, with this in combination with our commander, we can drain our opponents out pretty quickly. Another type of card that you might want to consider for this commander is something like Sanguine Bond. It's an enchantment for 3 black, and it says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So we're essentially doubling up on the life loss thanks to our commander, and then again other things like Thieving Amalgam. Even with just our commander though, again if we gain 6 life, we get to drain someone for another 6. Or obviously we can split that up if we really want to, but yeah, with this in combination with our commander and some stolen creatures, we can take players out really quickly. One final card that I want to bring up, though it is kind of expensive these days, is Shadow Spear. It's an equipment that gives equipped creature +1/+1, trample, and lifelink, but that's not the important part for this deck, though it is very nice. The important part is pay 1, permanents your opponents control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. When you are sealing creatures, you've got to target them, so unfortunately, if something's got hexproof, you can't take it. Well, unless you've got, well, this. So if your opponent's got a pesky creature that's really powerful but with hexproof, well, now you can take it still. Regardless, that's my take on Cthulhu, or whatever its name is going to be, and yeah, I think that this is a really exciting new Esper Commander that can be really powerful. I'm not only excited to see how players build around this commander, but I'm also just kind of excited to see what its name actually is. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.